Awesome. Good morning, everybody. Looks like we've got quite the crew here, folks from all over the US and the world, it looks like, for today's mini masterclass session. As I'm sure you've seen now from the intro slide, I'm the marketing director for Allen & Heath USA, Jeff Hawley, and we'll be doing what basically is a part two. There's a previous video, kind of some graphic basics. That link is going to be available when we host this afterwards up on the mini masterclass website, and maybe Samantha can toss that into the chat here, or just go to the Allen & Heath website and you can actually go to the Allen & Heath sessions tab, click on the mini masterclasses, and then in there you'll see, I think now we're probably 26, 27 archived mini masterclasses, and we'll be adding each week's session going forward. So if you wanted to go back and check out part one, which was mainly focusing on gradients, kind of layering within custom control, and a little bit of using shadows. This is where we're going to be focusing, kind of taking it to the next level and figuring out, like, where would you start? So we're going to run with the basic assumption that, you know, hypothetically, we've got this project going. There's a church local to us that has an HM64 or an Avantis or DLive, and they're looking to have a custom interface made for an iPad for the church use there. So where would we start? How would we go about making sure that we have something that's both functional and obviously works well for their audio needs, but also something that looks good and matches their branding, kind of ties everything all together in a powerful way? So a couple tips and tricks to get us going on how we might want to approach that task at hand. Essentially, the way I would start, assuming, you know, I kind of know who the client is, this passes my my inbox as a request. We need to make this graphic. We need to do a custom control interface. Obviously, the first question you would ask is, well, who is this? Well, in our case, I just actually Googled. I'm in Bothell, Washington, in Washington State, Pacific Northwest. I would say sunny, but it's actually kind of cloudy and may rain today. Surprise, surprise. So yeah, I just Googled local church and found one that we're going to use as an example today. So in this example, if I said, okay, I need to make this interface for the local church in Bothell, the main things I would use to start with is, well, what are their graphics? Do we have a logo? Do we have any background or design elements that might be particular to that location? And I would go about, which I'm about to show you how I would get those. In almost all cases, a quick and easy way to get you started at least. And then another thing which we'll touch on here a little more detail is, I would think about what colors best represent this client, in this case being a church, but obviously this could be a university, could be another business, could be a superior court, could be whatever project you've got going. There's probably some aspect of a visual design that includes some key colors. I'll also share a free tool you can use to then take those graphics, backgrounds, color elements to essentially create a bit of a color map for each project and move from there. So that's what we'll be up to for today. So here's the church that I found. This is Bothell United Methodist Church. I thought this was a cool example because just scrolling through their page really quickly, it seems they do have a logo, so that's going to be helpful. It also seemed that throughout the site, there were a couple of different background sort of effects that they had going on. You can see here behind the small groups, almost like a star field, universe, cloud picture thingy. I don't know what the technical name for that is. The starscape, I guess. So that was kind of neat. Seemed like an element that happened a couple times as I poked around the site. And obviously all of their logos seem to share a pretty common color theme. Now, this is, I think, the first important step. Now that I've visited the site, say I just browsed through it really quickly, which I actually did, and saw these elements. So the next step is either your client's going to say, cool, I will email you all of these assets, Or in many cases, maybe they don't have the technical skills, or you need to move quickly, or you're just making actually something you want to pitch to them where you've not quite got that relationship with them yet, where you could even request it and you need to just go figure out a way to get it. Well, one cool way to do that is, at least on the Mac side, kind of a similar technique on the PC side, but essentially using the Safari browser and the Inspect Element tool, I was able to get a PNG transparent version of that logo and of the background, and essentially show you how that looks really quick. Here is their website. Now, pretty much any element that happens to be on here, if I just go and control click, you can see this little inspect element. This brings up the inspect element tab, go to sources, and then go to images. And now you'll see there's the background by itself. Here are all these little different elements to the website. There are the logos that'll come in really handy, so on and so forth. So usually I'm going to say 95% of the time, websites are set up in a way that you can use that tool to just go into view source, view image. And in a lot of cases, you're ready to go. There's a nice little ping or PNG. These will be cool. I can use those. So once we'll assume you've been able to get those. From that point, by the way, I could have just dragged them onto my desktop and put them wherever I needed them. I do in this case, just so you can see here, I just created a little Bothell Church folder of all the things I was able to get, and a couple things we'll talk about in a moment that I was able to craft myself. I usually like to keep them neat in a little bitty folder collection, ready to rock, so that when I'm actually in custom control, I easily can point to all those assets and know that everything is where I need to get to them. So let's assume now we've kind of walked through this project. Bothell Church needed a custom control app. I went to their website. I got the basic graphics and things that I needed. And as I said before, the other important step here is figuring out, okay, well, what are their colors? So from this stage, there's nothing really in the file itself that's going to tell me. I could eyeball that. It's yellow. I think one of the things that, at least in my opinion, really separates out a okay looking custom control app, or any interface for that matter, and a really good one, is when you can tell there's some attention to detail. And to me, I think this exact color match is an important and easy one, particularly if you're charging the client. If you're building this and they're paying for it, you better get these things right. It's not good enough, in my opinion, again, just to be yellowish. It needs to be that yellow, this orange, that purple. There's an easy way to do that. So each one of those colors is essentially definable in multiple ways. One way to do this is with what are called hex colors, hex color codes. You could do it, that's basically a combination, another way of writing or representing the mix of red, green, and blue of a color. You could also, if you were more in a print landscape, it would be CMYK, which is a slightly different way of combining colors to get these colors. You might have heard of Pantone. This is almost like an audio world if you think about an A. So my guitar's a little too far away to grab, but if I grab the guitar and I play an A, probably most of the people on this call could tell me what's the frequency of that A. 440 cycles. So A is 440. It's the same note. One is described as a musical note. One is described in cycles per second. Or 432. Yeah, you're right. If you're, that's kind of a funny one. Yeah, so depending on where the orchestra is in the world, they may choose where that A is, but you get the point. There's different ways to represent musical frequencies, and this is a different way of representing different colors. There's different reasons why you might choose different ones, but for today's basic how-to, I'm going to stick with hex and RGB. So how do you get those? Well, I didn't just memorize them because there are millions and millions. I forget the exact number off the top of my head, but it would be a factorial I won't go down that path, but I could do the math if I had to, but it's millions and millions of colors that basically combine out of all of those variants of those 6 hex numbers and all of the variants of R, G, and B. So what's cool though is there's many of these. One I use is imagelr.com. And I can also just show you here what that looks like. So if you go here, basically did a quick screenshot of that logo close up. You can try with an image, you can upload it, or you can just paste in the URL where an image is hosted. And then as I hover over something and then click to lock it, now you can see this hex code's changing and the RGB is changing, and it's exactly that hex and RGB. So it's now not just yellowish or orange-ish, it is exactly that orange that's sampled there when you go through this process. Now, what I like to do, and as you can, I've put a little screenshot here at kind of how I did it. I can also demonstrate, since this app I'm in uses the same color picker across multiple apps on a Mac. So this little bit of my slide, if I go to format, let's see here. There we go. Now you can see that's purple. This purple, if I go to the color picker, you can see is this purple. And if you can check across here when you go to the different purple that it might be, it's all going to match up. So if I went in and did that orange that's on the slide, you'll see F88310. You can also represent that as F98410, and you can see 248, 132, 16. So we're close there. I might have sampled it from a slightly different image, but yeah, so we're 1 off. If I wanted to fix that, 248, 131, 16, and now you'll see we actually exactly to that hex code. So now from that point, that's this color, and I would drag it to my little picker. Now I've got it there to use for future reference. So that purple, orange, and yellow is exactly the purple, orange, and yellow from this logo. So from that point, then what I generally would do is kind of almost make like a little, I don't know, it's kind of like a mood board or a color, color map. So here are all the elements that I want to have pulled in, and I generally would jot all these down so I have them handy, and I add them to the color picker. So at this point, I'm ready to rock. I don't have to take, every time I go to touch an element in custom control, I don't have to try to figure out, wait, what orange was it? I've got it handy, it's in the color picker. I could easily copy and paste if I wanted to grab that hex. And I've got everything kind of right where I need it. It's almost like my show file, if you will. So now I'm ready to go. I know what all these elements are. As I said before, I would generally put these into a folder for easy access. It might be in my Finder. There we go. So from this step, just before we hop into custom control and show you how it all kind of came together, I took the logo. I also went into my graphic app and basically created a layer that is a gradient with rounded edges from the purple to the orange. I also went in and did one that is a purple to the yellow with the orange in the middle. And I grabbed basically just the icon by itself without the full word. And I made a little dividing line logo item, which I'll show you what I did with that in a moment here. So these are kind of all the things I created, kind of been playing with those, took all of these elements, and then hopped over to start a custom control app, which looks like this. So one thing that's really cool, as I mentioned, if I go into custom control and we look at this layer, for instance, this is a slightly transparent version that I crafted that was in that same folder from the purple to the orange. And if you go back, if you're curious as to how you might do that or why you might do that, check the previous custom control video mini masterclass that I did. basically just threw this back, I think 85% opacity on this. So it lets the little star field show through just a bit, and I think it looks a little bit hipper. I took this element, which is a graphic representation of a meter. I went through the meter, and instead of using just the stock, regular green indicator, color indicator of signal coming up, I used that same gradient and just shaped it and made it be the element for my meter. So as in this kind of fictional church application, let's say I have a tab where I can turn on sources and I can see the main output at all times. If we actually show what that looks like in the test. So look at that, I can turn all these things on and off. And if this was actually connected to a device and passing signal, even my little meter is sharing these colors and able to pull it all together. If I go to a fader view, very easily, I can select these faders, and even subtle, simple things like when you select it, what color is showing? Well, guess what? That yellow is that yellow. Easy enough to make that happen and to pull that all in. Also in this case, you'll note that throughout, the font that I've used is the same font that the church had on their website. So able to go in and at least get as close as you can. In this case, you may find modern serif font or a little more formal sans serif font or whatever it may be. There's a lot of font options within custom control. This case, I believe it might have even been the exact one. I don't exactly remember. Was this Lato? Yeah. So continuing through here, things like these little buttons, able to go in, and again, it's not just random color, this is that purple. As this is selected, it's that yellow, so on and so forth. So all of these, if we walk through, this one is the logo that I've taken where it's just the little logo centered it. Don't actually call Bob. Bob's a fictional fellow. He doesn't exist. Which is actually a philosophical side note, which I won't go into right now, but does he exist because I've created him and we've just spoke about him. Anyways, you can put in whatever you want. Point being, in this case, I was able to just basically not use this little layer to separate out and just have some text on the little star field. And again, if this was a project that I hadn't yet won, let's say, but I was really interested in having Bothell having their church go with an AHM 32, and I wanted to demo this as a rep, or if I, run a production company and I want to be able to, show kind of what kind of things we can do for different clients, this is pretty quick and easy. So basically, the whole process was selecting a tab container, which brought in this bottom layer. I wanted 4 tabs. I typed what they were called. I selected Mina as the font. And I said the color on, here's the trick of the whole thing. If I go to color on, now you can see. Right now it's the yellow. If I go and say, actually I want it to be the orange, now it's orange. And again, not just any orange, but that orange. So that quickly now, as I go in, everything's pulling together and matching. I didn't have to, go through a long convoluted process of trying to get everything to match. And now that we've kind of seen this, if we pop back to the actual website, you can see how closely that interface matches. So again, if I was one of the leaders at the church, I'd be very familiar with this look and feel. And Bob comes in from Bothell Audio Production Services and says, hey, do we have something cool to show you? And then being able to, kind of show off how cool this is, even your yellow. So again, hopefully there's some cool concepts and things in there that are helpful. It's just a quick little reminder in case you didn't get all of those tools. The view source inspect element tool was how I went in and got the actual bits. Inspect element, go to sources, go to images, take those, literally just drag them to the desktop. now I have it. And this image LR, any image that I want to be able to use and be able to get a sample from. Here's the little star field background. You'll see that that brings that in. Now, wherever I happen to hover, so you can see this actually isn't flat. There's kind of different tones in there. So I can say, well, that lighter tone, and now click, it'll hold it. There's my RGB, there's my hex. I could add that easily into the color picker, and I could put that in the interface if I wanted to. It would be that little lighter color there. And maybe I add a fourth little box in my map, and I'm off to the races. So hopefully that was a helpful little bit and some new info that maybe you didn't know. What are those little numbers and things, and how do those correlate? So essentially these hex codes correlating or matching up mathematically to the RGB, and in some cases RGB and a transparency. But basically, if you're using a tool like Image LR or using the system itself, in this case with just the Mac color picker, it will usually do the generation for you. And again, my biggest tip, if there was one takeaway I wanted to boil this all down to really what makes that difference and get you to that next level. The key to me is, that's why I've got all these weird colors in there from various projects. Once you get them, add them to the color picker and store that in there, so that when you're over in custom control, it's very quick and easy, as you just saw. If I'm on this main element, whatever I may be, and I want to change those properties, very easy, even when I have a little zoom overlay in my way for everything I'm trying to do. Look how quickly I can do that. So yeah, I guess that's the kind of the basic gist of it. Obviously, we've got Samantha and lots of other pros and lots of resources as far as how you would actually, the assumption in this exercise is that the church actually has these inputs. But even that part, if you're not aware in custom control, is very easy to configure. So the foyer, I'm essentially saying what that's controlling is the main level of the whatever it may be. So main level of, let's say, a mono matrix, that's channel number 4, and I don't want any audio taper, and I want the max gain or whatever it may be. So you kind of see as you go through, you're configuring all the actual sends of these. For these, just graphically, I've left them at the defaults. But you'd go through that step to actually wire it up. Quite easy to do. And each of these elements kind of lets you kind of get configured. So I'd want to, in this case, probably, post, pre, post gate, and I'd want to have whatever channel or scene that I've got all configured. So assuming you've all done that, then you would be ready to rock on all these. Some of these utilities may be sending GPIO or scenes that have that within it. Similarly, if you have a scene that is allowing house music to pass, or a few different ways you could skin that cat. In this case, with the foyer speakers, kind of a cool little nested, you could have a basic on for that scene or those groups of channels on that send, and then a separate foyer volume, which would obviously be controlling those. So nothing fancy that I've done really conceptually in that, but hopefully you would agree that this is a little bit more polished than most, and not too tricky to do. So I think with that, we'll open it up to see if we've got any questions. Let me get over to the chat. Yeah, let's see here. Yeah, the eyedrop tool is also excellent for grabbing colors as well. Yeah, there's different tools. There's actually in the Mac App Store a handful of different tools that you can enable that basically at all times, even without using your web browser. I don't have it installed on this particular Mac, but yeah, there's a little tool that in your top menu bar will come down, and whatever I mouse over of any application or anything on the screen will give me an RGB or a hex readout in real time as I'm sliding around. There's a lot of free apps, both on Mac and PC sides. Yeah, so see if we've got any other questions in here. Yeah, it looks like the links are there for the custom control software, which is free, the mini masterclass link, which are also free. So possible to use a moving background. That's a good question. I believe at this time, that's not a feature that's enabled. I'd have to try sticking a GIF file in there. A band with a rotating logo they use on a video wall. That would be super cool. Well, we would certainly will take that in consideration. I think that's the sort of thing that could be possible, but it's also one of those that's like, when I talk to our R&D team, I always just say, I don't know, it's just typing, right? So I don't really know how difficult that would be in the grand scheme of things. But yeah, awesome, Dustin. Thanks for the feedback. I'll make sure Samantha gets that request over. I don't think it supports GIFs, but I actually have not tried it. Yeah, it's just typing. Yeah, so resource manager, swap out images. Yeah, so as Samantha said, basically with resource manager, you can see the various things. Sorry, I've got zoom layers over the top of here. The various items that I've been playing with. I was working on another one that had actually a wood background. It's easy enough to to grab these and tweak them if I wanted to. If I had a GIF handy, I'm trying to think how I would do that, but I will check on the GIF thing. I'm going to say I don't think that it will actually rotate or move, but we'll see about doing that in the future. Yeah, and if you wanted to update or change from that point, you can do a swap or an update or change right from here. It can do it this way. You can also see which layouts you're using it in, the basic properties. You can name, rename to make things. Sometimes if you grab them through that inspect element, it might be a wacky name. Did Bothell know I was going to do that? No, they actually didn't. So if anybody wants to approach the church in Bothell and say, hey, do I have an awesome interface for you? Feel free. But no, just for this session, I honestly just Googled Bothell Church. And I think if I remember right, I chuckled a bit because they were, I think we're the highest ranked church, which I also thought was kind of a funny concept, just like an Amazon rating. They're doing really good because they were the first church that came up for me with the highest ranking. So hopefully they don't mind. Maybe I'll send them a nice little care package. Cool. Well, thanks everybody. I think with that, unless there's any other questions, obviously. Oh, Siri had a question apparently. She just chimed in and wondered what I was saying. So I think with that, we'll call it for today, and feel free to reach out. The last reminder that I'd like to share with everybody is for future mini masterclass sessions, please email us, contact us, and let us know what sort of topics you think would be cool. So we do our best to come up with things we think are interesting and different, but obviously if you've got ideas, shoot those our way. Whenever you get a reminder email from me, just respond to that. And you've got my email address, or ping Samantha and let us know, and we'll get those set for the future. So cool. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your week, and see y'all later. Thanks.